What if the answer to your deepest pain was buried just across the street, whispering in the snow? I'm standing in my neighbor Harold's backyard, the Minnesota wind cutting through my jacket, snowflakes stinging my eyes. His old dog Kennel looms in front of me, weathered and gray, like a forgotten relic. Then I hear a boy's voice, faint, desperate, calling from beneath the ground. My knees buckle, heart pounding so loud it drowns out the storm. For 8 years, I've chased every shadow from my son, Joshua, only to find dead ends. Now, standing here, across the street from my own house, I'm trembling, a single thought searing my mind. Is he here? Has he been here all along? Maple Hollow, Minnesota, is the kind of town you'd see on a postcard. Porches with rocking chairs, kids sledding down Main Street, neighbors swapping chili recipes at the annual fair. It's the kind of place where you leave your door unlocked, where trust is as natural as the pine trees lining the roads. But 8 years ago, that trust shattered, and I've been picking up the pieces ever since. My son, Joshua, was 5 years old, with red hair that glowed like a campfire and a laugh that could melt the coldest winter day. He was the kind of kid who'd name every stray dog he met, who'd beg to play in the snow until his cheeks were pink. One snowy morning, he was out in our front yard, just beyond the picket fence, building a snowman near the woods that bordered our property. I was in the garage, elbow deep in a truck's carburetor, promising to check on him in 20 minutes. Claire, my wife, was inside, grading papers for her third-grade class, humming a tune I can't recall anymore. 20 minutes passed. I stepped outside, boots crunching on fresh snow, expecting to see Joshua's grin. Instead, I found his blue mitten lying in the snow, half buried, like a piece of him left behind. He was gone. The town turned itself inside out to find him. Neighbors formed search parties. Trudging through the woods with flashlights, police brought in haze, drones buzzed over the frozen lake half a mile away, and divers broke through the ice, searching for a boy who wasn't there. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months. The headlines faded, the volunteers dwindled, and the police called off the active search. But Claire and I never stopped. Our house became a shrine to Joshua, his drawings still pinned to the fridge, his bedroom untouched, his mitten in my desk drawer. I touch it sometimes. When the despair creeps in, its frayed wool a lifeline to the boy I failed. I'm Ethan Coulter, 42, a mechanic who used to breed dogs as a hobby and still volunteer at the fire station when the call comes. I'm not a detective, but I've become one in my own way, poring over police reports, chasing leads that go nowhere. I run a Facebook group for families of missing kids, posting Joshua's photo every month, his smiling face frozen at 5 years old. Last year, a viral post raised our hopes of sighting in a town 3 hours away, but it was another dead end, another crack in my heart. Claire, 40, is a teacher, the kind who remembers every student's birthday. She copes through routine cooking, cleaning, teaching, her warmth masking the pain that never leaves her eyes. We're ghosts in our own lives, tethered to hope that's as fragile as the snowflakes falling outside. Maple Hollow hasn't forgotten Joshua either. Every year, the town holds the Light for Joshua Vigil, where neighbors gather in the square, lighting lanterns that glow like stars against the winter sky. It's a tear-jerking sight, those flickering lights, a reminder that we're not alone, that Maple Hollow still believes he's out there, but it's also a wound, a reminder of what we lost. I stand there each year, Claire's hand in mine, watching the lanterns rise, my mind dissecting every detail of that day. What did I miss? A footprint, a stranger's glance, a clue hidden in plain sight. Across the street lives Harold Stevens, late 40s, a widower who's been our neighbor for over a decade. As a former Army engineer, a quiet man who lost his wife and son in a home invasion 10 years ago, has Handy, always tinkering in his yard, but he's grown reclusive, his house a little shabbier each year. Claire sees him as one of us, another soul scarred by loss. But I've always kept my distance. Maybe it's the way his eyes avoid mine, or maybe it's just my grief, turning everyone into a suspect. Either way, Harold's part of Maple Hollow, part of the town that holds us together. Or so I thought. That morning, as I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by police files, I had no idea the truth was closer than it ever imagined. No idea that the answer to 8 years of pain was about to whisper from the snow. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing Maple Hollow in a quiet that felt more like a warning than a comfort. I sat at our kitchen table, surrounded by a fortress of police files reports, witness statements, dead-end leads that had become my second skin. Claire moved through the house, the soft clink of dishes in the sink a rhythm she clung to, like it could keep the grief at bay. I was flipping through a report about a vague sighting in Duluth when the doorbell chimed, sharp and sudden, cutting through the morning's haze. I stood, straightening my flannel shirt, and opened the door to find Harold Stevens on our porch, his breath fogging in the cold. He was bundled in a worn parka, his graying hair peeking out from a knit cap, and his face carried that perpetually serious look I'd come to expect. Harold was a fixture in Maple Hollow, the kind of neighbor who'd wave but never linger. His life a closed book since his wife and son were taken in that home invasion a decade ago. He'd been an Army engineer. Claire once told me, good with his hands, though you'd never know it from the peeling paint on his house across the street. Morning. Ethan, he said, shifting his weight, his voice low like he was interrupting something sacred. Sorry to bother you, but last night's storm took out part of your fence again. It blew over onto my yard. I winced, embarrassed. That old cedar fence had been a headache for years, sagging under every heavy snow. Damn. Harold, I'm sorry. You'll come get it off your property. Just need to grab a welder, mine's busted. And I haven't replaced it. He waved a hand, dismissive, but his eyes didn't meet mine, darting instead to the snowy ground. No need. I patched it up already. Just wanted you to know. I blinked, caught off guard. You didn't have to do that. Harold, that's thank you. A twinge of awkwardness settled in my gut. Fixing a neighbor's fence was Maple Hollow's way, sure, but Harold wasn't exactly the neighborly type anymore. Not since his loss. No trouble, he said, shrugging, his hands stuffed deep in his pockets. I had the tools out anyway, working on something in the back. I nodded, noticing the faint limp in his step as he shifted some old Army injury. Claire had mentioned once, yeah, I heard some hammering this morning, building something out there. His jaw tightened, just for a second, before he relaxed into a thin smile. Just tinkering. Sorry if the fence doesn't look brand new. It's old wood. It's fine, I assured him, waving it off. Thanks again, Harold, means a lot. He nodded, already turning to leave, his boots crunching on the snow-dusted porch. I closed the door, the cold air lingering in the entryway, and found Claire coming in from the kitchen, a dish towel slung over her shoulder, her cheeks flushed from the warmth of the sink. Was that Harold, she asked, unwinding her scarf from a hook by the door? Yeah, I said, hanging my jacket back up. Storm knocked our fence down again. He fixed it himself. Claire's face softened, a faint smile tugging at her lips. That's kind of him. It's been ages since we've talked to Harold properly. We should invite him over for dinner. Ethan, as a thank you. I hesitated, my gaze drifting back to the stack of files on the table. Dinner sounded nice, but my mind was tangled in Joshua's case-new tips from Detective Palmer. None promising, but each a thread I couldn't ignore. I don't know. Claire, I was planning to go through these reports tonight. The police got some new leads, and Ethan, she cut in, her voice gentle but firm, laced with a sadness that stopped me cold. She stepped closer, placing a hand on my arm. We'd become so closed off. When was the last time we had anyone over years? Ethan, years. I didn't answer, the weight of her words settling heavy. She was right. Grief had built a wall around us, pushing away friends, neighbors, even family. Joshua's absence was a void that swallowed everything else. Harold, too, Claire continued, her eyes distant. He's been alone since his wife and son died. Can you imagine it? Ethan, living in that house, no one to talk to, no one to share the pain he's lost as much as we have, maybe more. Her words hit like a punch. I thought of Harold, his quiet demeanor, the way he'd retreated into himself. Claire saw him as a kindred spirit, another soul broken by loss, and she wasn't wrong. But something about him, his darting eyes, his quick dismissal nagged at me, A splinter in my mind. Maybe you're right, I said finally, forcing a smile. Dinner could be good for all of us. Claire's face lit up, a rare glimpse of the woman she'd been before Joshua vanished. Ill planned something special. Pot roast, maybe. And that apple pie he used to rave about at the town picnic. I nodded. But as she turned back to the kitchen, humming softly, my eyes lingered on the files. My firefighter training had taught me to trust my instincts, to spot the flicker of danger in a room full of smoke. Harold's visit, his nervous tick, the hammering in his backyard, it all felt off, like a puzzle piece that didn't fit. But Claire's voice, her hope for connection, echoed louder. Was I just paranoid, letting grief turn a lonely neighbor into a threat? I shook my head, trying to dislodge the thought. Maple Hollow was built on trust. I couldn't let Joshua's absence steal that. 2. Not yet. The snow fell heavier now, cloaking Maple Hollow in a hush that felt more like a held breath than peace. I sat at our kitchen table, the police files spread out like a map to nowhere reports, witness statements, tips that had fizzled into nothing. Claire was in the living room, folding laundry, the soft rustle of fabric her anchor against the grief that clung to us like damp air. Harold's visit this morning replayed in my mind, his twitching hands and darting eyes like sparks in a dry field, small but threatening to burn, the faint hammering from his backyard, his vague talk of a new dog, it all nagged at me. A splinter I couldn't pull out. I tried to focus on a report about a vague sighting in Duluth, but my thoughts kept circling back to that weathered dog kennel across the street. I stood, my back aching from hours hunched over papers, and glanced out the window. Harold's house stared back, its peeling paint stark against the snow, the new Ring cameras glinting under the eaves like watchful eyes. Hey, Claire, I called, keeping my voice steady. I'm gonna invite Harold for dinner tonight. You're right, it's been too long. Her head popped around the corner, a rare smile breaking through the exhaustion in her eyes. Really, that's wonderful. Ethan. She set down a folded towel, her hand smoothing it absently. It'll make pot roast. Maybe that apple pie he used to love at the town picnic. It'll be good for him, for us. Her joy hit me like a wave, warm but tinged with pain. She hadn't smiled like that in months, and it reminded me of the Claire I'd married, the one who'd laugh at Joshua's silly dances. Sounds perfect, I said, but my chest tightened. Claire saw Harold as a kindred spirit, a man broken by loss like us. But his nervous tick, the way he'd brushed off my help, it didn't sit right. My firefighter training had taught me to trust my gut, to spot the flicker of danger in a room full of smoke. But Claire's hope made me question whether I was seeing ghosts. I zipped up my jacket and stepped outside, the cold biting my face, snowflakes catching in my beard. My boots crunched across the street, leaving deep prints in the fresh powder. Harold's house looked weary, its unshoveled walkway a testament to his solitude. I knocked firmly, the sound swallowed by the storm's quiet roar. No answer. I knocked again, louder, my breath clouding in the chill. Still nothing. Just as I turned to leave, a dull thud echoed from the backyard, like a hammer striking wood. My pulse quickened, a familiar instinct kicking in, the same one that had guided me through burning buildings. Harold, I called, rounding the house, my boots sinking into deeper snow. It's Ethan, from across the street. The backyard was a frozen chaos, untouched snow piling high, except for a cleared path leading to a small wooden structure at the far end, an old dog kennel. Its boards splintered and gray, like something left to rot. Harold was crouched beside it, tinkering with a hammer, his movements jerky, almost frantic. At my voice, he froze, then stood slowly, his face flushed. Whether from the cold or guilt, I couldn't tell. Ethan, he said, his voice tight, like a man caught with his hand in the till. Didn't hear you knock. Sorry. No problem, I said, forcing a smile, though my eyes flicked to the kennel. Surprised you're still keeping that old thing. Been years since you had a dog. Right, Rex? Wasn't it? Want help tearing it down? His jaw clenched, and for a split second, I saw something panic flash in his eyes before he masked it with a shrug. It's a reminder of Rex, he said, his words halting, like he was reading a script he hadn't rehearsed. Good dog. I like keeping it around. He gestured to a half-built structure nearby, raw lumber and scattered nails. Actually, I'm thinking of getting a new dog. Been working on this for a bit. I raise an eyebrow, the cold seeping through my jacket, pricking my skin. Seriously, building in this snow, that's some grit. Harold, I kept my tone light, but my mind was racing. This morning, he'd said he was just thinking about a bomb. No plan set. Now he was hammering away in a blizzard, haven't decided on a breed. He said, his voice steadier now, though he kept glancing at the old kennel, like it held secrets he didn't want me near. Maybe a puppy or something mid-sized. I nodded, studying him. His limp was more pronounced in the snow, his old army injury dragging his left leg. Claire and I want to invite you for dinner tonight. I said, thank you for fixing the fence. And, you know, I used to breed dogs hobby, not a job. I could help with that new kennel. Maybe take you to Northwoods. Kennels, good breeder. Not far. Harold hesitated, his hands flexing in his gloves, his eyes flickering to the kennel again. Dinner sounds nice, he said finally, his voice flat. Appreciate it, but the kennel. I'm good for now. I'll let you know about the breeder. I nodded, taking a step back, but my gaze lingered on the old kennel. Its placement, tucked against the fence, Harold's protectiveness, it felt wrong, like a note out of tune in a song I knew by heart. All right, I said, come by around 6. We'll see you then. He gave a curt nod, already turning back to the kennel, hammer in hand, his shoulders hunched like he was guarding something. I walked away, the snow crunching underfoot, but the unease clung to me like frost. Harold had been polite, but his quick refusal, the way he'd stood in front of that kennel, it stuck in my craw, a puzzle piece that didn't fit. Back inside, the warmth of our house hit me like a wall, the scent of roasting garlic filling the air. Claire was chopping vegetables, her movements precise, a ritual to keep the darkness at bay. His coming, I said, hanging my jacket on the hook, said yes to dinner. That's great, she said, her smile bright, though her eyes carried the weight of years. See, I told you he's just lonely. A dog will be good for him. Ethan, like it would have been for Joshua. She paused, her knife stilling, her voice softening. Remember how Joshua named that stray dog Captain? He was so sure it'd come live with us one day. Her words were a knife, slicing through the armor I'd built. I saw Joshua's face, his gap-toothed grin as he petted that scruffy mutt, promising it a home. I swallowed hard, the memory of his mitten in my desk drawer flashing in my mind. Yeah, I said, my voice rough. I remember. Claire resumed chopping, but I couldn't let it go. Claire, something's off with Harold, I said, leaning against the counter, choosing my words carefully. He was vague about the dog this morning. No breed, no plan. Now he's got a half-built kennel in a blizzard, and he's got these new ring cameras, motion lights, the whole setup for a guy who barely leaves his house. That's strange. She set the knife down, her brow furrowing, a flicker of frustration crossing her face. Ethan, he's been through hell, losing his wife. His son, you know what that's like. He's probably just nervous, trying to rebuild something. Those cameras, maybe he's scared. Living alone after that robbery, has not a criminal. Ethan, has family, in Maple Hollow's way. Her voice grew firmer, laced with a plea. He brought us soup when I had the flu last year. He fixed our fence without asking. He's hurting, just like us. Her words crashed over me, guilt and doubt swirling in their wake. She was right. Harold had been kind, in his quiet way. I remembered that soup, how he'd left it on our porch with a scribbled note, how Claire had called it a small miracle in a dark year. I thought of an old photo I'd seen in a town album. Harold at a picnic years ago, smiling with a boy who must have been his son. His arms slung around him like nothing could break them. He'd been one of us. Once. Was I turning him into a villain because grief had twisted my lens? I know, I said, rubbing my temples, the headache building. But, Claire, his story doesn't add up. I offered to help with the kennel, and he practically shoved me out of his yard. It's like he's hiding something. She stepped closer, her hand on my arm, her eyes searching mine, raw with pain. You're seeing ghosts again. Ethan, you've done this before chasing leads. suspecting everyone. It's breaking us, pushing everyone away. We need to live, not just hunt. Her voice cracked, tears brimming. I can't keep losing you to this, to shadows that aren't there. Her words were a blade, cutting deeper than it expected. Claire had held us together, her routine's a lifeline while I chased every lead, every false hope. Her belief in Maple Hollow, in people like Harold, was her last tether to the world before Joshua. Doubting him felt like doubting her, like tearing at the fragile hope she clung to. My firefighter instinct screamed to trust my gut, to follow the sparks, Harold's lies, the kennel, the cameras, but her plea, "You're breaking us," echoed louder, a warning I couldn't ignore. "You're right," I said, the words heavy, forced. "I'm probably overthinking it. Dinner'll be good." She nodded, squeezing my arm, but her eyes lingered, searching for the man I used to be. As I sat back down with the files, the unease didn't fade. Harold's lies were piling up like snowdrifts, small but heavy. The kennel, the cameras, his nervous glances, they were pieces of a puzzle I couldn't see yet. I wanted to believe Claire, to trust in Maple Hollow's heart. But deep down, I knew something was wrong, and the clock was ticking. The snow fell in thick curtains, swallowing Maple Hollow in a white haze, but it couldn't drown out the storm in my head. Harold's leash's fake friends, the rushed swim, that damn kennel had piled up like drifts, and Claire's plea to trust him only made them heavier. I wanted to believe her, to see Harold as just a broken man, but my gut screamed otherwise. A firefighter's instinct honed by years of spotting danger and chaos. Dinner was supposed to be a step toward normalcy, but it had unraveled faster than I could have imagined. Harold had bolted mid-meal, choking on his wine when Claire mentioned Joshua's love for dogs, muttering about checking his new German shepherd, had left his coat hanging by our door, a silent accusation of my failure to keep things civil. I sat at the dining table, the pot roast growing cold, Claire's apple pie untouched on the counter. The house was quiet, save for the soft clink of her clearing dishes, her movements heavy with disappointment. "Has probably just nervous," she said, her voice strained, like she was convincing herself as much as me. The dogs knew. "It's understandable." "I suppose," I said, but the word tasted like ash. Harold's panic, his abrupt exit, it wasn't just nerves. Something was wrong, and I couldn't sit here pretending it wasn't. I stood, grabbing his coat from the hook. "He'll take this back to him. It's freezing out there." Claire paused, a plate in her hands, her eyes searching mine. "Ethan, don't make it worse. Please." "I won't," I promised, but my voice was tight, my heart pounding with a mix of guilt and resolve. I pulled on my jacket and stepped into the night, the snow crunching under my boots, the cold biting my face like a warning. Harold's house loomed across the street, dark except for a faint glow from the kitchen window. The streetlights cast long shadows, their light fractured by the falling snow, like stars caught in a storm. I knocked on his front door, the sound swallowed by the wind. No answer. I knocked again, harder, my breath clouding in the air. Nothing. My pulse quickened, the same instinct that had guided me through burning buildings kicking in. Then I heard a sharp, frantic bark from the backyard. Not the new kennel Harold had been building, but the old one, the one he'd been so protective of. My stomach twisted. Why was the dog still outside in this weather? Harold had left to bring it in. I rounded the house, my boots sinking into the snow, the barking growing louder, more desperate. "Harold," I called, my voice cutting through the storm. "It's Ethan. You okay? I brought your coat." The backyard was a frozen wasteland, the snow piling high except for that cleared path to the old kennel. The German shepherd was there, chained to a pole, its fur dusted with snow, barking furiously at the kennel's wooden frame. My heart stopped. A faint sound, a boy's voice, muffled, scared, came from beneath it. My knees buckled, the world tilting. "Joshua." No, it couldn't be. But the voice was real, a plea cutting through the storm. I dropped the coat, fumbling for my phone, my hands shaking as I typed a text to Claire, "Call 911. Something's wrong at Harold's." The battery icon blinked at 5%. A cruel reminder of my carelessness. I hit send, praying it went through, and edged closer to the kennel. The dog's barks turned to whines, its eyes locked on the structure. Up close, I saw Ita trapdoor in the kennel's floor, its padlock undone, a metal handle glinting in the dim light. My breath caught, a cold unlike the winter sinking into my bones. What the hell was this? Before I could move, a scraping sound came from below, like metal against wood. The trapdoor shifted, and Harold climbed out, his face twisted with rage and fear, snow clinging to his parka. You couldn't leave it alone, he snarled, his voice low, dangerous. He lunged forward, a handgun gleaming in his grip, the barrel aimed at my chest. I froze, my firefighter training kicking in, adrenaline sharpening my senses. Harold, what is this? I said, raising my hands, my voice steady despite the fear clawing my gut. What's down there? None of your business, he spat, stepping closer, his limp pronounced, his left leg dragging. Get back, Ethan. Now, I sidestepped, keeping my eyes on the gun, my mind racing. His army injury, Claire had mentioned it years ago, a bad knee from a training accident. It slowed him, gave me a chance. You don't want to do this, I said, inching toward the kennel. Buying time? Claire called the police. They're coming. His face contorted, a mix of panic and fury, and he swung the gun at my head. I ducked, grabbing his wrist, using the strength I'd built hauling hoses and breaking down doors. His knee buckled under my shove, and I twisted his arm, the gun clattering into the kennel, sliding into the darkness below. He roared, tackling me into the snow, his fists pounding my ribs. Pain flared, but I rolled, pinning him, my knees pressing into his chest. What are you hiding? I demanded, my voice hoarse, snow stinging my eyes. He struggled, his strength fading, his injury betraying him. In the distance, sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing through the storm. Claire's text had worked. Before I could catch my breath, the trapdoor creaked again. A boy climbed out. Not Joshua, but a lanky 13-year-old with wild eyes and matted hair, clutching a toy rifle painted to look real. Uncle Harold, he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. I'll fight the enemy. I won't let them take you. He waved the plastic gun, his hands trembling, believing it was a weapon, his face a mask of brainwashed loyalty. My heart stopped, confusion crashing over me. Kid, put it down, I said, my voice gentle, keeping my hands up. It's okay, you're safe. Then another figure emerged, frail and pale, his red hair dull but unmistakable. Joshua, my Joshua, 13 now, his eyes wide, empty, staring at me like I was a stranger. My legs gave out, my breath a soft spow. Joshua, I whispered, the world narrowing to his face. The boy had lost. Harold collapsed in the snow, sobbing, his voice broken. They're my family. I was protecting them. The police swarmed, their shouts a blur, hands up on the ground as they cuffed Harold, pulling me back. The boy with the toy rifle, Caleb, I'd learn later, Harold's nephew, thought dead, dropped his weapon, his face crumpling in confusion. Joshua stood frozen, clutching the kennel's edge, his gaze darting between me and Harold. I sank to my knees, snow soaking through my jeans, my heart shattered and soaring. Joshua was alive, but he didn't know me. Caleb's desperate cries, Harold's sobs, they echoed the tragedy of it all. Claire's trust in Harold flashed in my mind. Her plea to see him as family now, a bitter irony. 8 years, and the truth had been across the street, buried under a lie. The sirens grew louder, the lights bathing us in red and blue. But all I saw was my son, so close, yet so far. The snow kept falling, blanketing Maple Hollow in a quiet that felt like grace after the storm of that night. Police lights flashed, their red and blue pulses cutting through the haze, as officers cuffed Harold and led him to a cruiser. His head bowed, his sobs muffled by the wind. Paramedics swarmed, their voices sharp but kind, wrapping blankets around Joshua and Caleb, guiding them to an ambulance. I stood in Harold's backyard, snow soaking through my jeans, my ribs aching from the fight. But all I could see was Joshua, me boy, alive, his red hair dull but real, his eyes empty as they met mine. Caleb, clutching his toy rifle until an officer gently pried it away, looked lost, his face crumpling as he called for Uncle Harold. My heart shattered for them both. Two boys stolen by a man's broken mind. And for Claire, whose trust in Harold now lay in ruins. Claire ran across the street, her coat flapping, her face pale as she reached me. "Ethan, is it?" Her voice broke when she saw Joshua, tears streaming down her cheeks. She froze, afraid to move closer, as if he might vanish again. The paramedics ushered us to the ambulance, where Joshua sat, wrapped in a blanket, his thin frame trembling. Caleb was nearby, eyes darting, still wary of the enemies Harold had drilled into him. I wanted to hold Joshua, to tell him he was home, but his blank stare stopped me cold. 8 years, 8 years, and I was a stranger. At Maple Hollow Memorial Hospital, the sterile hum of fluorescent lights and the antiseptic smell grounded me, a stark contrast to the chaos of Harold's yard. Claire and I sat in the waiting room, her hand gripping mine. As doctors examined the boys, Detective Martinez, a kind-faced woman with a notepad, joined us, her expression grave. "Harold's not talking much," she said, "but from what Caleb and Joshua have said, he kidnapped them both. Caleb's his nephew, misreported dead after the home invasion clerical error. Joshua was taken that day in the snow. Harold built that bunker, used his army skills to hide them, told them a war was raging above to keep them scared." I nodded, my throat tight, the weight of it crushing. Claire wiped her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. 8 years of lies. Our boy, he doesn't even know the world. "Hell, get there," Martinez said gently. "Kids are resilient. With therapy, support, they can heal." Dr. Patel, the pediatrician, approached, clipboard in hand. "Physically, they're malnourished, with vitamin D deficiencies and weak muscles expected after years underground. No signs of abuse, though they were fed, kept clean. Joshua's asking about you, which is a good sign. Caleb's more withdrawn, but he's talking." "Can we see them?" Claire asked, her voice breaking, her fingers tightening around mine. "Yes," Patel said, "but go slow. They're processing a lot. Don't expect instant recognition." In Joshua's hospital room, he sat up in bed, small and lost among the white sheets, his eyes wary but curious. Claire pulled out her phone, its wallpaper unchanged for 8 years, a photo of 3-year-old Joshua, grinning beside a snowman. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly, stopping a few feet away. "Do you remember this?" His brow furrowed, studying the photo, and Claire began to sing, her voice trembling but clear. "Hush, little baby, don't say a word." Joshua's lips moved, a faint hum joining hers, a spark of memory that tore a sob from my chest. "That's it," Claire whispered, tears falling. "You love that song." I stood frozen, my heart soaring and breaking. "Joshua," I said, my voice thick, "I'm your dad. We've been looking for you every day." He nodded slowly, uncertain, but the hum was a lifeline, a thread to the boy we'd lost. We visited Caleb next, his room dim, his gaze fixed on the floor. "Hey, Caleb," I said, holding out a book I grabbed from the hospital gift shop, a story about young heroes. "Thought you might like this. It'll come back." "Okay." He took it, his fingers hesitant, and mumbled, "Thanks, Mr. Ethan." His voice, small but real, sparked hope. He was a victim, like Joshua, and I couldn't leave him behind. That night, Claire and I met with a social worker, starting the process to foster Caleb. "It won't be easy," the worker warned, "but with therapy, stability, they can heal together." We nodded, knowing Joshua needed Caleb as much as Caleb needed USA Brother in trauma, a shared path to recovery. Maple Hollow stepped up in ways that still choke me up. Neighbors launched a GoFundMe, raising thousands for the boys' therapy, their messages of love flooding our inbox. The Light for Joshua vigil transformed into a welcome home party, lanterns glowing in the town square, kids running through the snow. A neighbor's daughter, barely 10, gave Joshua a stuffed dog, its tag reading "Captain." "For your old friend," she said, grinning. Another child handed Caleb a matching one, named Hero. The boys clutched them, Joshua's fingers tracing Captain's fur. Caleb's eyes softening, and I had to look away, tears burning. Claire and I brought the boys home, setting up bunk beds in Joshua's old room, posters of superheroes on the walls. Claire apologized one night, her voice soft as we lay in bed. I was wrong about Harold, she said, her hand finding mine. I wanted to believe in people. I know, I said, squeezing her hand. You kept us together. Claire, that's enough. Joshua asked shy questions about school, Captain, his old life, his voice tentative but growing stronger. Caleb listened, quiet but present, their shared glances a silent bond. I closed my Facebook group, My Fight One, and started a local support group for missing kids' families, vowing to keep the light burning for others. The road ahead was long therapy, nightmares, the scars of Harold's lies, but we were together. Joshua was home, Caleb was ours, and Maple Hollow's heart held us tight. 2 years later, I'm standing at Maple Hollow's town fair, the summer sun warm on my face, the air thick with the scent of cotton candy and grilled corn. Joshua and Caleb are out there, tossing a football near the bandstand, their laughs weaving together like brothers. Joshua's red hair catches the light, brighter now, his smile an echo of the boy we lost. Caleb, taller and less guarded, grins as he fumbles a catch, his hero stuffed dog tucked in his backpack, a quiet reminder of his new home. They're still in therapy, working through the scars of Harold's lies, but they're ours. Joshua reclaimed, Caleb chosen. Watching them, my heart swells, a fragile joy tempered by the years we can't get back. Harold's trial peeled back his pain, a veteran broken by PTSD, his bunker a warped attempt to rebuild what he'd lost. It didn't excuse his crimes, but it woke Maple Hollow up. We funded mental health programs for veterans, a small step to catch others before they fall. I speak at community events now, sharing our story, urging folks to trust their instincts, check on neighbors, and fight for missing kids. Grief taught me to see clearer, to act when something feels wrong. Joshua and Caleb are proof hope can outlast despair, but only if we keep searching, loving, listening. This journey showed me that family isn't just blood, it's the bonds we forge, the lights we keep burning. If our story moves you, share it, like, subscribe, join the conversation. Help us spread the word to bring more kids home. For every Joshua, every Caleb, there is a community ready to fight. I'm keeping my promise to them. To you, never stop. Keep the light burning.